There has to be some common sense.
Yes, sir. They have the car stopped at 10th and Ranch, Michael Byler.
We still don't know who pulled the trigger.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Police Off the Cuff Real Crime Stories. I'm your host, Bill Cannon, a retired NYPD sergeant with 27 years of service. You know, folks, we've been covering a couple of stories here, and one of the important ones we've been covering, well, all our stories are important, but is this individual here on the screen, Gonzalo Lopez. And we covered it in length, and one of the things there's no movement on this case. He's still out there. They haven't captured this desperado. And we're going to stay on this case if there are any new developments. But so far, there haven't been any new developments. And he's still out there. They're still searching for him. There's still a $50,000 reward. So as I said, when we get any new developments in that, we will certainly apprise you of anything new. You know, in the Gabby Petito case, there's been some action in regards to the civil lawsuits. And, you know, Brian Laundrie's parents, they claimed in a court filing that they were exercising their constitutional right to remain silent when they refused to speak to Gabby Petito's parents. And while her death, this is the language in the legal language, while her death is unfortunate, they've done nothing wrong, that's the filing from their attorney. Attorneys for the couple, Mr. Bertolino, they filed papers to dismiss the lawsuit brought by the Petitos. And it alleges that the Laundries helped their son cover up Gabby's death, and they knew where the slain Long Island woman was all along. The suit claims the couple's silence and refusal to help them track down their daughter caused emotional distress, but attorneys for the Laundrie said their arguments are fatally flawed and want the case thrown out with prejudice, which would prevent them from refiling the claim. According to Mr. Bertolino, the Laundrie's attorney, at its core, the complaint is critical of the Laundries for refusing to respond to either Joseph Petito and Nichole Schmidt or law enforcement. However, compelling individuals to respond to inquiries by private citizens or law enforcement through a civil suit like this would turn our entire constitutional system and the freedom afforded to individuals in this country on its head. The motion implied. A new lawsuit was filed in regards to, as of May 6th, against the Brian Laundrie's estate for $30,000, alleging wrongful death, in that he, in fact, caused Gabby's death, and it has been filed. So let me see if we can share on screen. What do we got here? If I can share this on the screen with you guys, I'm having a little bit of a problem here right now. I have to delete this. It's let's see what we could do. A little technical difficulty. Okay, let me see if I could pull this up there. I had a bit of a, let's see if we could pull this up. Nope. There's the Laundries are filing a lawsuit against the Petitos. Excuse me, the Petitos are filing against the Laundries for an unlawful death. But we're getting some technical. Here we go. This is Brian Enton from News Nation.
off against the parents of Brian Laundrie in front of a jury. Gabby's parents, Joseph Petito and Nichole Schmidt, are suing, claiming Chris and Roberta Laundrie knew all along that their son murdered his 22-year-old fiancée. The trial is set to begin on August 14th, 2023 at a Venice, Florida County courthouse. You may remember.
Folks, you hear that date, August 2023. So it's more than a year away. So there's a lot of legal maneuvers that can happen that could preclude this case ever going to a civil trial.
Gabby went missing in late August while traveling with Brian on a cross-country road trip. Her remains were found in Teton National Park in Wyoming on September 19th. An autopsy revealed she was killed by strangulation. After Gabby went missing, Laundrie returned to his parents' home in Northport, Florida. On September 13th, he disappeared, and his parents said he went hiking, and they said that he never came back. On October 20th, Laundrie's skeletal remains were found in Mykahatchee Creek Environmental Park, also in Northport. Alongside him, a note claiming responsibility for killing Gabby. And now the Petito parents are going after the Laundrie parents with damning allegations. Among them, that Brian Laundrie told his parents he murdered Gabby on August 28th and were making arrangements for him to flee. The lawsuit saying, quote, while Joseph Petito and Nichole Schmidt were desperately searching for information concerning their daughter, Christopher Laundrie and Roberta Laundrie, were keeping the whereabouts of Brian Laundrie secret. And it is believed were making arrangements for him to leave the country. The lawsuit also alleges Roberta Laundrie blocked Gabby's mom's cell phone and Facebook when she repeatedly pleaded for information regarding the whereabouts of Gabby. The attorney for the Petito family has said publicly that the family is seeking $100,000 in damages, saying they suffered pain and mental anguish as a result of the willfulness and maliciousness of the Laundries. Meanwhile, the Laundrie parents already filed to have the case dismissed, calling the lawsuit frivolous. Joining me now to discuss, Dave Ehrenberg, state attorney for Palm Beach County, Florida. Dave, thank you for being with us tonight. You know, I've read the lawsuit. I have read the motion to dismiss, and I think obviously most people, Dave, would agree that morally and ethically, what the Laundries did during that time to the Petitos was not right. But the question I have is it against the law, and will it actually stand up in a civil lawsuit?
Yeah, good evening, Brian. This civil lawsuit will be difficult for the plaintiffs to win. They're going to be fortunate if they could survive a motion to dismiss, and that is a motion that the defense here, the Laundrie parents, have already filed. And when you do that motion, the court assumes all the facts to be true. And then the question is, did the plaintiffs here, Gabby's parents, state a legitimate cause of action? They're saying that it's intentional infliction of emotional distress. Well, to have that, you need a duty and you need a breach of that duty. You need causation and damages. Let's go to the first one, duty. What is the obligation here? And the defense is saying, hey, they don't have any obligation to volunteer any information. And so that's going to be a question. But in paragraph 25 of the complaint.
You know, guys, even in the chat, I could see a lot of people talking about how the Laundries have no heart, no soul, all of that stuff. And we probably would all agree with that. But I think it comes back. One of the main issues in this, and of course, I'm no attorney, but is, do you have the duty to incriminate yourself? Do you have the duty to more or less confess on something that could hurt you legally? And although I think we would all agree that what they did in holding the information, that I believe that they knew that Gabby was dead and that their son did it, by holding that information back, was that, did they have a duty? And I think that's what this attorney is trying to say. Did they have a duty to report that? Did they have a duty legally? And I think the answer to that is no. And that could be the entire basis of this lawsuit. Moonlight View, morally, yes, you're right. Morally, yes. But you know something? Morals and the law, they don't collide. The law protects you from self-incrimination. Let's hear a little bit more from this attorney.
Right. The plaintiffs here, Gabby's parents, said that it's beyond their silence. It's the fact that they had a press conference where they lied, where they knew, according to the complaint, that Gabby was killed by their son. And yet they said, we hope the search for Miss Petito is successful and she's returned or reunited with her family. And that is what they say was intentional infliction of emotional distress.
Again, I am not at all going to sit here and stand up for the Laundries because I was out there and I also saw what the Petitos were going through during that time. But at the same time, legally speaking, didn't the Laundries have a right to just stay quiet and listen to their lawyer and not say anything?
They have the Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination. They can remain silent, but that's a criminal protection. That's a protection against criminal charges. This is a civil lawsuit. So they could, at the same time that they can enjoy the Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination, they could actually be sued and lose a lawsuit. But this is uncharted territory. I'm not familiar with a similar case like this, but this case is full of unusual facts. I think it is unlikely for Gabby's parents to win this lawsuit. I think that it would be a victory if they could survive this motion to dismiss. But, in the end, they're going to have to show that this family, Brian's parents, owed them a duty, whether it was to say something, not to ghost them on Facebook and on the cell phone, or at least not to lie in public about what happened to Gabby. So we'll see. If it does survive a motion to dismiss, then it would be up to a jury, and that would be way down the line.
Yeah, it certainly is so bizarre that according to the lawsuit, the Laundries literally blocked Gabby's parents' phone number and Facebook. There was something else interesting, Dave, that I noticed. The Petitos filed their lawsuit. The Laundries filed the motion to dismiss. And now the judge has given the Petitos more time to sort of bulk up their lawsuit. Is that unusual? Does that give us a glimpse into what the judge might be thinking?
No, that is actually pretty normal. What happened here is that the defense filed a motion to dismiss based on the procedural parts of the lawsuit, meaning that they said this lawsuit is not filed properly. And indeed, the lawsuit didn't claim specifically intentional infliction of emotional distress. So the judge said, hey, rewrite the lawsuit. We're going to give you time to do it. The bigger motion to dismiss, the more substantive one, will be the one where they said, even if you accept everything they're saying is true, there still is no possible way there could be intentional infliction of emotional distress. So there's a difference between the procedural motion to dismiss and the substantive one. The substantive one is for all the marbles. That's the one that could eliminate this lawsuit for good. But the procedural one, the judge will just give them a chance, just rewrite it, because the judges do that quite often.
Interesting. Do you think it is possible that the Petitos filed this lawsuit possibly knowing that they wouldn't win in the end, but because they want more information to come out through the discovery process? Because Dave, there's still so much we don't.
Brian Enton, that's a great question. The Petitos may just be filing this lawsuit to force the Laundries to tell the truth about what they knew and when they knew it. And that, of course, could be tremendously uncomfortable for the Laundries, but at the same time, the Petitos will be getting the truth, and they want to try to force the truth out through this civil suit. In regards to the judge granting them more time and allowing them more procedural rope to give to this lawsuit, I think that's a consideration, because this lawsuit could very well be thrown out on its merits. It seems like it's blazing new territory, perhaps new legal ground that hasn't been tried before. So I think that the judge is doing everything possible to make sure that he's fair to them and that they have enough time to file it. Look, a trial date was set for August 2023. So that's more than a year away from now. So between that time and what's going on legally, could this case, in fact, be thrown out?
Know about what the Laundries knew throughout all of this, when they knew it, text messages, discussions they had. Is it possible that could come out in discovery?
Sure. And you have to feel for the parents. I mean, they just feel that they were abused by the Laundries. It was just a moral and ethical obligation to be decent human beings. This was, after all, their son's fiance who lived in their house for over a year. And yet when she went missing, they blocked her parents from communicating and allegedly lied about it. And so in the complaint, they put at least two explosive allegations. One, that the parents knew that Brian had killed Gabby because, according to the complaint, Brian admitted it to his parents. And secondly, that they were trying to help him leave the country. That's a new area. And the plaintiffs here, Gabby's parents, have said that they will be able to prove everything they put in that complaint. And if it goes to a jury, they'll need to.
Yeah, that was sort of the jaw-dropping part of the complaint for me, where they said that Brian Laundrie's parents actually knew that he killed Gabby before all of this came out. My first thought was, though, like, how could the Petito lawyers know that? How would they know that to put that in the complaint? And do they have to know it's true to put it in the complaint?
You know, folks, one of the issues here, and I tried to give a long, hard search of my soul for this. If Brian Laundrie was my son, and my son did what Brian Laundrie did and confessed to doing in his diary, would I have protected him the way the Laundries did, or would I have felt a moral obligation to tell him to turn himself in? We discussed this in great length, that perhaps if Brian Laundrie had turned himself in, he would be alive today, maybe facing 25 to life or being convicted of 25 to life, but he would be alive. Instead, we know what happened. He killed himself. Folks, look, if you think you would have protected your son, like, and just theoretically, your son like the Laundries did, put a 1 in the chat. If you think you would have been moral and had your son turn himself in, put a 2 in the chat. I'm just interested to see what the folks would say in the chat that are following this. So if you would have behaved exactly the way the Laundries did in protecting your son, I want you to put a 1. If you think that you would have turned yourself in, or told your son to turn himself in and did the moral thing, put a 2 in the chat. Wow, someone's putting a 3. I didn't give a third choice. There's a lot of moral people in the chat. Look at that. Tara Ellis, there's so much evidence we haven't heard about. Maybe there's something in all of it that the Petitos feel they can really win this suit. Judy Fisher, I would get my son the best to turn himself in. I'd do my best to get myself. Deanna Thomason, too. Well, you guys are morally on the high ground. That I sort of think that I'm with you guys, and I probably would have erred on the side and tried to have my son do the right thing. But none of us are in that situation. You know, we're not faced with that. Crystal Stars 222. So, I mean, without being faced with that, can we really say 100% what we would do? That you'd like to think you'd do the moral thing. I think what the Laundries did was sort of despicable, you know, and we all have Sierra J, morally obligated to do it as a parent. I think we all have disdain for the behavior of the Laundries, but faced with the same thing, what do you think? Pauline Buckles, it's a slippery slope for my son. I would think if I encourage him to say nothing, as he has to live with it or die, as this case turned out. You know, Pauline Buckles, even if you encourage your son, say, to turn himself in, you would advise him to turn himself in with counsel, which means he couldn't confess to the police because he would have counsel, and any counsel would advise him not to confess, not to talk, but he could very well turn himself in. So, you know, don't forget, during this time they had a warrant for his arrest for illegally using Gabby Petito's credit card. So it's a moral slippery slope for sure. But we all like to think of ourselves as morally on the moral high ground, and we all look down upon the Laundries for the behavior that they exhibited. But would we, if we examine our own souls, would we in fact do what we think is the right thing and had told your son to turn himself in. An interesting way to look at it.
Well, they've said they're going to back it up. Now, it's not a verified complaint, and meaning that there's no sworn affidavit there, but they can put allegations that they believe are true, but they've said that they're going to show it. Now, it doesn't mean anything if they can't prove it at trial. You got to prove your allegations. So they must have some information somewhere that leads them to believe that Brian did tell the parents and that the parents did try to help him leave the country. And, if you think about it, those are the allegations that have received the most attention in this lawsuit. Even though the second allegation about leaving the country, that really doesn't have anything to do with the substance of the lawsuit. That doesn't have anything to do with an intentional infliction of emotional damages, emotional pain on the Petitos, because whether or not the family of Brian Laundrie tried to help Brian leave the country was unknown to Gabby's parents at the time. And so it could not have inflicted emotional pain upon them. But it is a salacious allegation. And as such, it's gotten this lawsuit a lot more attention than it would have otherwise.
Yeah, it certainly has. And if it's true that the Laundries were going to help him leave the country, wouldn't that be a crime? Wouldn't they be arrested for that?
If they knew that he indeed had committed a crime and killed Gabby and then tried to help him leave the country, yeah, that could be accessory after the fact. And I do not expect that charge to be filed against Brian's parents. I think this is case closed. But if new information comes out as a result of this civil lawsuit, the feds may be interested in this case again.
It is certainly going to be interesting to see how all of this plays out. Dave Ehrenberg, it's always good to see you. Thanks for being on tonight.
So, folks, some interesting topics raised with that. It's just, we all look at ourselves as moral beings, and that we think that the potential that we would do the right thing and we would turn our son in or tell our son to turn himself in. I guess we'd all like to think that, but when push came to shove, would we do that? I would like, would we do that? I don't know. I don't know for a fact if we would. This is the new lawsuit filed by Gabby Petito's mom, coming from a different angle. And maybe this is legal strategy also. Let me play this here.
That lawsuit has been filed by Gabby Petito's mother, and this suit is specifically against Brian Laundrie's estate. We have it for you. Of course, all the details on WFLA.com. It states that it's seeking an amount at $30,000 or more, stating that Gabby Petito was intentionally killed by Brian Laundrie and that Gabby's family, quote, incurred funeral and burial expenses, and they have suffered a loss of care and comfort and suffered a loss of probable future companionship, society, and comfort, end quote. The lawsuit comes following, you might remember, the previous civil lawsuit that was filed back in March, claiming that the Laundries were told by Brian, their son, that he had murdered Gabby soon after it happened, and that they even sought to help him flee the country, claims that longtime Laundrie attorney Steven Bertolino has called baseless. Now, this creates two separate legal actions filed against the Laundries, and both of them are seeking a jury trial right here in Florida, should they survive any motions for dismissal. We'll stay on this for you, both of these lawsuits. Keep you posted to any developments. You can read the latest right now on WFLA.com and WFLA app.
So, folks, that's a relatively new law. Relatively, it's filed in May, filed the first week of May. So is this a strategy? Is this a legal strategy that they're filing multiple lawsuits in order to have, say, the ammunition to go in case one of the lawsuits is dismissed, that they have a second one as a backup in seeking the truth? Is that a possibility? I think it possibly can. I love my daughter more than anything in this world, but no one has the right to take anyone's life. She would never, but if she did, she would have to answer for it. It would be so hard, but necessary. I guess you're putting your daughter in the position of being Brian Laundrie, and what would you do if she, in fact, did something like what we're talking about right now? Just some real tough legal issues for sure. I just think that potentially these lawsuits, when I speak to Joe Murray, who is a frequent contributor on this show, and he's our legal expert, he sort of feels that these lawsuits are coming out of left field, and there's a good potential that they could be dismissed because it's more or less what we spoke about before, requiring someone to self-incriminate themselves in order for this lawsuit to be successful. And I don't think if one part, although this is a civil lawsuit, it's not a criminal lawsuit, but don't criminal law and civil law meet at some point? Tara Ellis, it honestly reminds me of how a teenager thinks, that every problem is just the end of the world. Until you help them and walk them through how to deal with it, there's always a better way. Tara, I agree with you. I do. I'm a parent. I do a lot of we're all parents out there. And I know numerous times in the lives of my sons that I gave them good counsel as a dad, as their loved one, their mother, their dad. And I gave them good counsel based on my experience, based on my education, based on my feelings towards them. And I would try to get them to what I consider to do the right thing, And sometimes the advice that we parents give can be very tough, very difficult, and to have a moral compass, I guess. And it seemed to me, and during this, we covered this case all during this, the Gabby Petito, Brian Laundrie thing. And it was so heartbreaking at so many terms. And it was so easy to despise the Laundries for what they did. I sort of felt that, Gabby Petito was almost like their daughter. She had lived in their home with their son. She was engaged to their son. Yet they just turned their back on her pretty damn easily. Kate, I like the moms that stand with their kids but smack them with the purse when they know they're lying and say, tell the truth, either in the principal's office or the police station. Yeah, Kate. Is that Kate? I guess it's Kate, C-A-I-T. Yeah, I mean, it's a difficult world we live in. We want to do the best for our kids, but we also want to make good decisions for them or help them make the right decisions. It's not an easy situation. Moonlight View, my dad was a judge who would have told us, admit nothing, deny everything, but murder is murder. Well, that sounds familiar, Moonlight View. Folks, this is Police Off the Cuff, real crime stories. If you like our show and you're not subscribed, please go on our YouTube, hit that subscribe button, give us a thumbs up, ring that bell. If you want to help support us, we have a Patreon. We have 3 different levels. You can support us on our Patreon. And if you want to join our channel as one of our channel members, we have a YouTube with 5 different levels. You see the folks in the chat with the green font. They're part of our YouTube family. We really appreciate them. So, I'm not coming forth today with any smoking gun information on this lawsuit, but I think it's interesting to see where it's going and the fact that it's going forward. Apparently, we'll see if this survives the appeals.
Welcome back, everyone. Here to you live now from Fox. We got some breaking news just happening within the past hour. We have an update to the case that made national headlines late last year, the murder of Gabby Petito. Well, today, the Petito family filed a civil lawsuit against the family Laundrie. The lawsuit accuses the Laundrie parents of knowing their son had murdered Gabby and attempted to help him flee the country. The lawsuit seeks more than $1,000 in damages for causing the Petitos pain and suffering along with mental anguish. Gabby's parents filed a lawsuit yesterday in Sarasota County, listing Brian's parents, Chris and Roberta Laundrie, as defendants. The complaint gives a brief timeline of Gabby Petito's disappearance and death before revealing new accusations not previously released by the FBI. The lawsuit states that on or about August 28th, 2021, Brian Laundrie advised his parents, Christopher Laundrie and Roberta Laundrie, that he had murdered Gabrielle Petito. On that same day, Christopher Laundrie and Roberta Laundrie spoke with the attorneys, with their attorney, and sent him a retainer on September 2nd, 2021. The lawsuit then mentions how the Laundrie family went on vacation on September 6th and 7th while Gabrielle Petito's family was suffering as they were extremely distraught while attempting to find their daughter. Finally, the lawsuit alleges while Joseph Petito and Nichole Schmidt were desperately searching for information concerning their daughter, Christopher Laundrie and Roberta Laundrie were keeping the whereabouts of Brian Laundrie secret and is believed were making arrangements for him to leave the country. This is the latest in a saga, really, that has captured the attention of the country. The FBI concluded their investigation, finding Brian Laundrie did kill Gabby Petito. Again, the suit is asking for more than $100,000 in damages. And once we get more information regarding this breaking news update, of course, we'll be updating you as the status of that lawsuit continues on in the court system.
So, folks, one of the things that's interesting about this civil suit is it seems that it really isn't it's not about money. It's really not about money because they're suing for a very small amount of money, considering that what occurred. I mean, it doesn't seem like it's really about money at all. It seems like it's seeking the truth. Somehow, that's what they're more interested in, is getting the truth from this lawsuit than it doesn't seem like the money is a big part of it. Yeah, there has to be a dollar amount because that's the basis of a civil suit. But I think the Petitos are more looking to find out the truth. And, when we look at even these photos on the screen, it brings us back to this case and how many bad twists and turns there were in this case, and how we all stood by and watched it and just wondered about a lot of the things that were going on and predicted what was happening. Wish we gave this much attention to American Indian girls that are missing, Michael Marin. By suing for a small amount of money, it's more likely a chance to win. I don't know, Janice. I think that if the judge rules, if it's going to be a judge trial or a jury trial, more likely it will be a jury trial. I think the jury can award a bigger or a smaller award based on the damages they feel were inflicted. Both sides have lost their children. I hope there can be healing. I think if the Laundries truly apologized and answered questions privately, they could all cry together. Kate, I don't think that's a possibility. Once the law is involved, there are ramifications for your actions and for telling the truth within the law, and it could hurt you. So I don't think that's an option that they could sit around in a circle and cry together. I think that's over with, Sherlyn Schaffner, I can't help but think I'd march my own child down to the police department with a newly hired attorney, but not having been there myself. How can I make assumptions? Yeah, very difficult, Sherlyn, but I appreciate your candor and telling the truth, what you think you would do. And tough to know because none of us are in that situation right now, but tough to know. Absolutely. Let me play this up on the screen.
Murdered Gabby. We have responses from both sides on this civil lawsuit as we break down this brewing legal battle here with you live on WFLA Now. Live with you across all platforms, folks. JB Buno here with you in our stream center. Glad to have you with us this Wednesday evening. Got a lot to break down, but really it comes down to these two documents. I'm going to hold them up here. This is, of course, the lawsuit that we...
guys, this is early on in when the lawsuit was first filed. So we're just sort of going over some old territory, but I find this interesting, and also interesting because of the fact that a second lawsuit has been filed at the beginning of this month. So let's just listen to a bit of this.
We talked about last time here on WFLA Now, the lawsuit filed by Joseph Petito and Nichole Schmidt, Gabby Petito's parents, against Chris and Roberta Laundrie, that being Brian Laundrie's parents. And now we have a lengthy, I believe it's 20 pages. Make sure I have that right. It is a 20-page motion to dismiss, the argument for dismissal as articulated by the attorneys representing Chris and Roberta Laundrie, Brian Laundrie's parents. Let's first break down what we're going to do here on WFLA Now. For those of you who missed the lawsuit, let's first break down what is in the lawsuit that was filed, the lawsuit that made waves on the internet a few weeks back. There's a lot to it, and we want to let you know that you can click on the link in the description on this video. It'll take you over to WFLA.com, the WFLA app, where you can read more about the lawsuit itself and the motion to dismiss. But I'm going to kind of break this down here for you for the sake of time and for the sake of the fact that we, of course, talked about this last time with you on WFLA Now. So there's really three main allegations that we have in the lawsuit filed by Gabby Petito's parents. First is that in the aftermath, really the day after Brian murdered Gabby Petito, as of course the FBI has confirmed in their investigation.
Jemisi, I wonder what excuse is now being given for Brian Laundrie's actions. Because every time someone commits a crime, I only hear it because of mental disorder or soft drugs. Yeah, well, that's not a defense, a mental disorder or defect. I mean, insanity is a defense, but I don't think you can use mental disorder as a defense. But thank you for your comments.
That Brian had told his parents, and that Chris and Roberta Laundrie were aware that Brian had murdered Gabby, that something, of course, just terrible had happened between the two of them. That is, of course, the main center point of the lawsuit that was filed by Joseph Petito and Nichole Schmidt. There's also the allegation that the parents of Brian Laundrie attempted to get Brian out of the country, help him flee the country. And there's also the allegation as well that Nichole Schmidt, Gabby Petito's mother, was blocked on phone and on Facebook and could not contact Roberta Laundrie. I'm talking about now the mother to mother, could not talk to Chris.
You know, folks, that allegation there is pretty horrendous. However, again, legally, do you legally have the duty to contact the parents of your son's fiance? Morally, I think we'll all jump to it and say morally, of course they do. But legally, I don't think they do.
Excuse me, Roberta Laundrie, Brian Laundrie's mother, in the aftermath of Brian Laundrie returning home to Florida. Now we have this motion to dismiss right here. And I've been reading through it, and it's, of course, it puts forth now an argument to dismiss the lawsuit. And it lays out all the different reasons as to why the lawsuit should be dismissed. But before I go through the grounds for dismissal, what the attorneys representing Chris and Roberta Laundrie are.
You know, Bo Peep, that's a really interesting comment. If the parents knew that Brian killed Gabby when he returned with her van, then aiding and abetting is illegal. Yes, Bo Peep, you're 100% right, but that's why they never opened their mouth. And they deny that, and they'll deny that they knew that. They'll deny that to the end of time. But excellent point. Excellent point.
Arguing our grounds for dismissal in Sarasota County, Florida. I want to read for you the statements that we have from both sides. Of course, us doing our due diligence here, speaking to attorneys from both sides on this legal battle that is sort of brewing in these early stages now before we ever hit a courtroom. Of course, the documents that have been filed by both sides now. I spoke to the attorney representing the Laundries, that being Steven Bertolino, who, of course, you have seen on WFLA Now in the past from previous interviews that he has conducted. And he says, he sent this statement that says the following: a motion to dismiss the baseless and frivolous lawsuit commenced by Gabby Petito's parents was filed in court. The Laundries have exercised their constitutional right to refrain from speaking and have relied on counsel to speak for them. This is not only common practice in our civilized society, but it embodies the exercise of fundamental rights under the United States and Florida constitutions. The Laundries' rights are inalienable, and the Laundries can never be liable for exercising their legal rights in a permissible way. Myself and my colleagues at Trombley and Haynes, who are representing Chris and Roberta Laundrie in this matter, are confident that the constitutional rights of all citizens of this country will be protected by the dismissal of this lawsuit.
You know, the attorney for the Laundries, Steven Bertolino, he took a lot of heat, I think, during this case in regards to having them and Brian Laundrie remain silent. And one part of the heat was that, and I said this before, I stated this before, had he perhaps had Brian Laundrie turn himself in or uh, turn himself into law enforcement, even for the warrant, but instructed him not to talk about anything else, perhaps he would be alive today. He would have gotten charged with the murder, no doubt, but he would be alive at any state of what stage would he have been in? Would he have been doing 25 to life? Would he have been doing 5 to 15 for manslaughter? We can't predict that, but that's an interesting prospect, and we had brought that up during this investigation. Judy Fisher, Bill, I heard legal analysts say that his parents, sister, no one is obligated by law to have to say they knew he committed the crime. Judy Fisher, you're 100% correct. That is 100% correct. And knowing the law, not being an attorney, we've spoken to our legal analyst, Joe Murray, numerous times. And he's resolute that he believes there's also no basis for this lawsuit. That remains to be seen.
We'll go over exactly more of what that means when we go over the lawsuit, or excuse me, the motion to dismiss itself. But yes, for those of you wondering, as far as what happens now legally with this civil lawsuit in Florida, they will not be, Christopher and Roberta Laundrie will not be represented by Steven Bertolino, the attorney who, of course, has made headlines for representing Christopher and Roberta Laundrie. He is, of course, based out of East Islip on Long Island in New York. They are going to be represented by Trombley and Haynes. That's a law firm, of course, licensed to practice law here in the state of Florida. Now we have the motion to dismiss. I want to let everybody know that after I go through the grounds for dismissal here, what's being argued as the grounds for dismissal, we're going to go through your hashtag HJB comments. Want to get your reaction, of course, as we do with all of our streams, with all the stories that we cover. You can use hashtag HJB in the Facebook Live, YouTube Live comment sections, or on Twitter. We'll try to bring in as many as we can. Really want to spotlight what you have to say with this. And it's an anticipated development, but it's development nonetheless in a story that so many of you still want reporting on. So let's go now to, again, it's right here, sent to me. This defendant's motion to dismiss the complaint. It goes over some background, and we'll have to, of course, get legal analysis for this, but a lot.
You know, folks, ultimately, and of course, JB is talking about the grounds to dismiss, and this will ultimately be decided on its legal merits by a judge, by a civil court judge, who will determine whether or not legally the Petitos have ground to stand on in bringing this lawsuit forward. And that'll be the determination. And the judge will make it, of course. Mickey Mantle, Brian Laundrie arrived back home alone in Gabby's van, says it all. Yeah, it says a lot, but not in a court of law. It's not. Aunt BB, if they do have proof, then they should have proceeded with the lawsuit. I think anyone would. I think more than anything, this lawsuit is seeking the truth. Tony Monty, it may get dismissed, but I certainly don't blame them for trying. Neither do I. And as I said, I think what this lawsuit is more so doing is seeking the truth more than looking for financial reimbursement or financial gain from this. You could never be reimbursed for the loss of your daughter anyway. And it's, there's no amount of money that could bring her back. So Moonlight View, Kathy Bates in practice, I agree, but they obtained lawyers' advice, which indicates they were aware of pending issues. I don't know. Guys, there's so many relevant legal issues as well as moral issues with this case. And many of them have been discussed before. I'm just bringing them back up since there was a new lawsuit filed on, I believe it was May 6th, in regards to the wrongful death. And they were seeking, the Petitos was seeking a small amount of money, relatively $30,000, which is nothing in regards to civil lawsuits.
Lot of this document goes into the argument of and the definition of and the claim of intentional infliction of emotional distress, and whether or not there was intentional infliction of emotional distress by one party against the other, by Chris and Roberta Laundrie against Gabby Petito's parents. Withholding information from one party to the other is going to be at the center of this legal battle. And of course, that information being whether or not they, Chris and Roberta Laundrie, knew of more details than what they were, of course, telling Gabby Petito's parents, which there wasn't any contact between the two. But now you're going to hear more in this document about how one side didn't really contact the other and how that's not illegal. And we're going to kind of get into that more into the document. But what that reflects, as far as the story that we have been covering, is that Joseph Petito and Nichole Schmidt, Gabby's mother and father, were desperately trying to get a hold of Brian Laundrie's parents, Chris and Roberta.
Folks, just think of that. And their daughter is engaged to Brian Laundrie, and they cannot get a hold of their daughter. And the Laundries have no legal obligation to notify them of anything that they know. And this is where legal and moral collide head on. And we say, oh my God, horrible, horrible, right? But they had no legal obligation to notify them that their daughter was, their son came home without their daughter. Let's put it that way even. How horrendous was that? But again, they had no legal obligation to notify them of that. So think of that and just think of the position that puts the Petitos in. Just outrageous to think.
Trying to get answers as to what happened to their daughter. You guys remember the press conference when Nichole Schmidt, Gabby's mom, was so visibly upset. You could just see the emotion brewing in Joseph Petito, Gabby Petito's father, as they were frustrated that they were unable to get through to Brian Laundrie's parents just to find out where their daughter was. And that breakdown in,
you know, guys, when I see, I'll pull it back a little bit, and I don't know if you guys remember,
that they were unable to get through to Brian Laundrie's parents just to find out where their daughter was.
And there it is right there. And during this, I actually went to Maya Kahatchee Preserve to take a look at what it was like. And it was just, I just thought it was unbelievable.
As they were
the wilderness,
frustrated
and
that they were unable to get through to Brian Laundrie's parents just to find out where their daughter was.
And there you go, Maya Kahatchee Creek Environmental Park. And I was there, this definitely not a country bumpkin, a New York City guy going into the Maya Kahatchee Creek. And I remember I was streaming live on my phone. A lot of you guys were going, Bill, don't go any further. Don't go in there. It's scary, you know. And I was just like, I just thought it was fun. I just thought I would bring that up.
And that breakdown in communication is argued a lot in these documents. But as it's articulated here by the attorneys representing Chris and Roberta Laundrie, it's not illegal to not talk to somebody. And we're going to get into that here and whether or not it falls under a legal definition of, again, as going back here, a legal.
You know, folks, Moonlight View, I do believe the Laundries' actions did cause immeasurable pain and duress on Gabby's family. Agreed. But is that suable? Is that a violation of the law, Moonlight View? That's the question. Maleficent. You are speaking to these people all the time, and all of a sudden they stop talking to you. If they were true blue, they would be just as concerned as the parents. Agreed, but they were protecting their son. And that's the difference in this.
Legal definition of intentional infliction of emotional distress. Again, by inaction, the inaction of not speaking from one side to the other. I want to I'm going to read this here. I'm going to go just kind of fast forward. A lot of this, of course, references other court cases, not anything out of the ordinary for any motion to dismiss. The plaintiff's legal theories are fatally flawed and could never be remedied by amendment, thereby requiring dismissal of the complaint with prejudice, is what's read, what we have here on page number 5. In section number 1, it then introduces the definition of what is outrageous conduct. And it says, importantly, the standard for outrageous conduct is particularly high in Florida. They then go into what is, and there's going to be a lot of legal jargon in here, but what is
knitting artisan. I'll never understand protecting your child from the consequences of committing murder. However, knitting artisan, you weren't put in that position. And until we are, difficult to say what our actions would be.
Is the standard for quote unquote outrageous conduct. It reads here on page 8, although the complainant, or excuse me, I'll read that again. Although the complaint alleges the Laundrie's conduct was quote unquote outrageous, the complaint's failure to provide factual support rising to the level of outrageous conduct makes that allegation nothing more than a legal conclusion. The essential allegations against the defendants are nowhere close to meeting the necessary standard. And this gets me now into my conversation with Pat Reilly, who I spoke to on the phone in recent days, talking to him about the inevitability that there was going to be this motion to dismiss. Now, Pat Reilly is the attorney in Florida, representing Joseph Petito and Gabby's mother, Nichole Schmidt. A lot of folks remember the name Rick Stafford. Rick Stafford, of course, also being in New York. Pat Reilly is going to be representing Gabby Petito's family here in the state of Florida.
Mudcat, the toughest part would be to prove that Brian Laundrie offered his parents information that could have been helpful to Gabby's parents or the searchers. I think that I believe that Brian Laundrie told his parents that he had in fact killed Gabby. I firmly believe that. I have no proof of that. But I think that, I think his diary, he confessed to it in his diary. So I think that his parents had to know that. Judy Fisher, I have nightmares if I go to bed without apologizing for a silly spat I had with my husband. I can't imagine what I'd go through if I kept information like the Laundries knew to myself. Good point. Moonlight View, look, the Laundries knew Gabby was in jeopardy. That's all. Mickey Mantle, we need Joe Murray on this. I don't know. I'm sort of glad Joe's not here today. He'd be arguing the opposite of me. He'd be taking the polar opposite view. Knitting artisan, it is true that I have not been put in that situation, but I know I could not subtract the pain of fellow parents. Not what I want to support character like that in my child. I would love her still. I think you're speaking from the heart. That's for sure. And but difficult parents to know what you would do unless put in that situation.
And he told me, and we had a phone call where I was able to get some quotes from him. But he basically said, in response to where is the evidence, I asked him. I basically said on the phone to him, I said, Pat, there's a lot of folks looking through this document, looking for the evidence to back up these massive allegations that you've made against Christopher and Roberta Laundrie. Where is the evidence? What is the evidence? I was looking for some details, just trying to get anything from him that he could provide to us. And he said, quote unquote, they'll have to wait and see. If we didn't believe it was true, we wouldn't have put them in the complaint. So Pat Reilly is confident in the strength of the evidence that they have, that once it does make it to court, provided that this case isn't dismissed, if it does make it to court, they believe they are confident in the evidence they have to back up the allegations that Chris.
See, folks, JB is hitting it right on the head. If this makes it to court, August 2023 is light years away from now. May 2022. So we're talking 14 months from now. Many legal briefs, many court documents, many new twists and turns legally will happen. In this case, could be dismissed before it ever sees the inside of a courtroom. That's a possibility. And then it could go forward. I'm playing devil's advocate here. I don't, but it seems that very tough for this case to go forward. What are they proving? What violations of the law did the Laundries commit? We all agree they violated the law, the moral law, but that's not the same as civil law. So those are the things that a judge will have to decide.
And Roberta Laundrie, Brian Laundrie's parents, were aware that Brian murdered Gabby. Let's continue going through a couple more pages of the document, and we'll get to really the conclusion because that kind of wraps everything up. It goes through all the allegations. It lists the key allegations in the lawsuit filed by Pat Reilly on behalf of Gabby Petito's parents, and the attorneys for Brian Laundrie's parents respond, none of the allegations recited above, either alone or together, describe outrageous conduct. Continued on page 10, if the Laundries quote unquote act of doing nothing other than maintaining their privacy and silence is enough to subject them to this supposed cause of action, then there would have been virtually no limitations on the tort of intentional infliction of emotional distress, and the fundamental right to remain silent under any circumstances would be obliterated. They are, of course, pointing to, you have the right to remain silent in this country. And that there is of course, what the attorneys here are stating is that Brian Laundrie's parents not speaking to Gabby Petito's parents isn't unlawful and doesn't rise to the allegations of it being outrageous conduct, or, to quote earlier on the legal definition from earlier in the document, intentional infliction of emotional distress. This is at the heart of what we had talked about for so many streams here on WFLA Now.
So, folks, I think we all understand the legal issues, and the big thing is, can you be forced to self-incriminate yourself? And the answer to that is no. You have an absolute right to remain silent. So the Laundries not speaking, did that put them in violation of any law? And the answer to that is no. Morally, is it put them in violation of every moral clause that we could possibly think of? Yeah, 100%. But this isn't going to be tried in the court of public opinion. It will be tried in a courtroom. Folks, Joe Murray is a great attorney. He's also a great legal advisor for this show. Joe's a retired NYPD police officer. And if you need an attorney in the New York metropolitan area, criminal attorney, Joe is your man. You can contact him at 718-514-3855, or you can email him at joe at jmurray-law.com. His website is joemurray-law.com. And Joe Murray is a friend of the show and, of course, a fantastic attorney. John Beatty Law, www.jbeattylaw.com. John Beatty is a renowned personal injury attorney. He also retired as a decorated NYPD sergeant. John comes from a proud NYPD and FDNY family. He was an active sergeant in Brooklyn North and supervised in the legal bureau. John is a proud member of the Honor Legion and the Blue Knights. John Beatty litigates across country for seriously injured victims and has helped recover over $200 million for grieving families. Call John now for a free consultation. John Beatty, 917-797-9520. So, folks, that's about our coverage for today. I just sort of wanted to bring this case back into the forefront a bit. There's no new smoking gun actions in regards to anything really new that is going to change this case. However, the civil suit is active, and there was a new portion of the civil suit that was filed on May, I believe it was May 5th. So I thought I'd bring that to your attention. And all the legal issues with this case are very, very interesting. Knitting artisan, would the Laundries have been incriminating themselves or their son? I know there is a spousal privilege, but does the same apply to a child? Can parents refuse to testify against a child? I don't think they can force you to testify against anybody. I mean, you can always take the fifth. You can testify against your family member. People do, but I don't think they can force you to do that. They put you in the box, the witness box. You can just say you plead the fifth. Judy Fisher at Tara Alice, I lost a son, not to murder, but he is still gone. As a brave parent, you are stuck with knowing you have to accept that. You have no choice. Every parent wants to do more for justice. Judy Fisher, sorry in regards to your loss, and thank you for sharing that with us on the show. So, folks, wow, I actually went over an hour. I didn't intend to go over an hour, but again, folks, if you're not subscribed to Police Off the Cuff, Real Crime Stories, go on our YouTube, hit that subscribe button, ring that bell, give us a thumbs up, and you want to contribute to us. We have a Patreon, and of course, a YouTube where you can join our channel. So, folks, on behalf of Police Off the Cuff, Real Crime Stories, I'm Bill Cannon, and I want all you guys to have a safe and wonderful day, and we'll talk soon. Have a great day.
One episode just ain't enough.